Bam ba bam 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 ba bam 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 ba 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 bam bam ba bam bam. What's up? Everybody, just making sure you're awake. How are you today? Good. It's good to hear. My name is Scrappy. You guys have been asking for this video in particular for a long time. And so I am finally giving you guys what you want. My apologies on the delay. Like Drake once said, better late than never, but never late is better. So I know you guys might be mad. My apologies. I'm no longer a full-time content creator. I'm doing what I can, okay? Either way, without further ado, I now present to you the absolute best and most accurate weapons tier list of Season 20 in Apex Legends. Let's get it. Okay, before we get started, I want to note a few things. First off, when I'm talking about the strength of these weapons and therefore rating them respectively in their respective ranks, I'm thinking about one main thing over everything else, and that's going to be versatility. With my time in Apex, I genuinely believe the more versatile a weapon is, the stronger it is. There's a direct correlation between the two. Why is that? Well, I define versatility as a weapon that is good at every range. As good as it can be at every range. And the strongest weapons you will find in this video are going to be the most balanced weapons for every range. You know, there are some guns out there that are really specific for a certain range and not so specific for another range. I think although it is strong in its category, what it's meant to be used for, it's weak in the general scheme of things, and that might impact its rating. It might lower it a little bit, because when I'm thinking of the strength of these weapons, I'm thinking of, like I mentioned, versatility, but also just how applicable, how useful that gun is in every situation in the game, not just in one situation, because the answers are different. Anyways, that's all I have to say. Let's get into the video. We're gonna go in order. 30-30, a gun that was super duper strong last season. Mind you, I've never used this gun in my entire life. I've never been mad at the game. Didn't need a crutch weapon like that. But last season, whew, everybody and their mother was using that weapon. I was on PC too. The first time in my entire life I had to start using that weapon. And boy, was it strong as hell. I ended up actually liking it a lot. I could see the appeal of it. But as of Season 20, they nerfed it more or less into the ground. It's not as overpowered as it once was, but it's nowhere, but it's not really weak. And so, considering how good it is at long ranges and not so good at closer ranges, I might have to give this one a solid B tier rating. If we're talking about last season, comparatively, just to give you guys some perspective, if we're talking about last season, this is an automatic S tier weapon. It was that strong. Due to the nerfs regarding hipfire, bullet drop, damage, all sorts of things, I'm going to have to put it in the B tier category for right now. Moving forward, Alternator. Alternator is a sleeper gun, I'm not going to lie. The Alternator is one of my favorite guns to get off rip. The slow fire rate of that weapon, but higher damage per bullet, especially compared to an R9, makes it a very easy to control weapon. Hence why a lot of lower skill players will gravitate towards a weapon like this, because there's a large margin of error. Because there's a lot of room for error for you to make some mistakes with this gun, because it's very forgiving. It's the perfect pocket submachine gun, but it does crumble in the later situations in endgame when you're going up against, you know, red armor, volts, all sorts of things. Overall, I'll probably have to give an Alternator an A tier rating. I think it's very powerful, and in fact, it's really the only useful light SMG this season, which is kind of irritating if you ask me. You throw disruptors on there, you might be able to make an argument for S tier. But one thing I forgot to mention, when I'm talking about these weapons, I'm not talking about them with their hop-ups at all. Just, you know, max attachments, purple mag, barrel stabilizer, stocks, all that, but not hop-ups. But I will mention them for you guys. That's just not how I'll be rating them for this video. All the heirloom weapons, I guess these are going to be pretty boring. We don't really have to talk about these too much. They are heirloom weapons for a reason. They are the strongest weapons in the game for a reason. If I could give them their own category, I would just put them all in its separate category. But for now, we'll put them all S tier, because in their own way, they're really that powerful. Especially with the bow, you have the long range capability, but also short range capability with the built-in hop-ups with it. The EVA 8, that's just a barrel stuff. Good luck, kid. 2 feet away from me, you're dead. Kraber is a Kraber. 210 in the head. Wingman, probably the strongest gun in the game right now. But like I said, those are boring. They're care pack weapons. Of course, they're going to be strong. It is what it is. So we'll put them in that category of S tier right now. Going onto the car now. The car SMG used to be one of my favorite SMGs, especially when it was first released. It was very powerful when it was first released. Has received many nerfs through the seasons, and including a nerf at the beginning of the season, which a lot of people weren't aware of. They actually increased the recoil a bit. The horizontal recoil, I believe they nerfed this season at the top of the season, but didn't say anything in the patch notes. It wasn't until the split did they update saying that the car actually received a recoil nerf, meaning that it's harder to control. That, in addition to all the other nerfs that it's received over the season, this hasn't been my favorite weapon at all. Honestly, I think it's a very weak SMG, especially compared to other SMGs that exist out there. The beautiful thing about the SMG, excuse me, the car, is that it is... The beautiful thing about the car is that it does take both light and heavy ammo, and both heavy mags and light mags, so, you know, it makes looting very convenient for you. And so for some of you guys, you might be able to rate this higher, but honestly, for me, I'm putting this in C tier. We have seen the car in a much, much stronger state. It is currently not that right now. This version of the car is very weak, and I find myself rarely using it. And I'll be sure to tell you guys what weapons I'm using a lot. One of the weapons I am using a lot is alternator. Moving forward, snipers. I never use these weapons at all. Ever, ever, ever. The charge rifle. I mean, I'm gonna keep it a buck. This is F tier. We'll just go out on a limb here. This is F tier. Yes, it's powerful because it can shoot you for like 170 in the head, which is like the only gun, non-heirloom weapon that can do that. Excuse me. But they nerfed it, I believe, a couple seasons ago or last season, to where it's not hit scan anymore. The little light that it would emit outside of the barrel to show you exactly where you're aiming is no longer there anymore, so it's much harder to hit your shots. Out of all the snipers, it's definitely the weakest. I'm putting that in F tier. You should really never be using this weapon. If you're going to use a marksman weapon, I can name you 5 different ones you should be going with before this weapon. Again, speaking in terms of versatility, snipers are very good at long range, but they really aren't the best when it comes to every situation and every range. And so you will see them rated a little lower. Yes, they are powerful for what they're meant for, but when push comes to shove, and you're in endgame, close range, and you got, you know, a lot of you guys like to carry ARs with sniper rifles, which is stupid, but you got an SMG with a sniper as your backup, and you know you're emptying out your magazine of the SMG, and you're switching to the sniper, and you're missing everything, and you're losing that fight because everybody else is using 2 spray weapons. And so you can see how you can see at every point of the game, a gun like this really isn't the most suitable for this type of video game that we're playing. You want to snipe? Go play fucking Call of Duty, bro. Anyways, devotion. Remember, no hop-ups attached to any of these when I'm rating them. The devotion. I think the devotion is a pretty mid weapon, especially if we're not talking about the turbocharger. I might have to put this in. Drum roll, please. What's my heart taking me to? I'll probably have to put this in D tier. Like I said, I'm not talking about any hop-ups, so this is not associated with the turbocharger. If you put the turbocharger on the devotion, I'd rate it much, much higher, considering how long it takes for it to charge up to get to its fast fire rate, its maximum fire rate. The iron sights are horrible. It's very bulky. It slows down your strafe a lot because it's an LMG. What else is there? It's got a lot of recoil on it. Overall, I wouldn't recommend using a weapon like this. I never find myself using this weapon at all, unless it's a gold Evo, and I'll use it as like my pocket SMG. Other than that, I'm comfortable with putting it in D tier. Flatline's always been a solid weapon since it's come out. It hasn't really received that many nerfs compared to a lot of other weapons, but it's received a few. The biggest one was a hipfire nerf for all ARs though, which affected the flatline, I feel like, more than other ARs out there. The flatline, It's still a very reliable weapon. It's not S tier. I have to put that in A tier. That's a weapon I find myself using all the time. It is pretty difficult to use for a lot of people because of how much recoil it does have, but it's good for all ranges, close, medium, and far. In my opinion, this is one of my favorite weapons, and it always has been. I think this was one of the first weapons I got a 20 bomb with, a flatline. So it's got a special place in my heart, but it's a really powerful weapon. The damage on it is insane. It's much stronger than a lot of other ARs and a lot of other guns in general. This should be something that's you use constantly in your rotation for when you're playing Apex. Whether you're trying to get 4Ks, 20 bombs, rank up, whatever it may be. G7. The G7 this season is what the 30-30 used to be last season. I'm comfortable with putting this into the A tier category right now, especially because there's so many bullets in it. It is good for all ranges, surprisingly. The hipfire has been better. I think they may have recently nerfed the hipfire of it. It's really not the greatest at all. Close range, but it's not the worst. And you could definitely get away with using it medium and definitely far range as well. It's got about 20 bullets, each one doing what, 35, 40 damage. The damage potential for a gun like that is insane. The recoil isn't really anything that crazy. It's so easy to use this gun, a caveman can do it. Very powerful weapon. I don't use this gun all that often. I much prefer spray weapons, but I'm never against using the G7. It's a very powerful weapon. So I'll put that in A tier. The Havoc. Havoc right now, without the turbocharger. I know turbocharger, we're going to put that in S tier. That's currently like meta this season. I'm sure you guys have figured that out yourself. This is also another gun that I'll put in A tier. You're going to probably see a lot of A tiers here. And a lot of D and F tiers as well as we move forward. The Havoc is a very powerful weapon. I think it's much easier to control this weapon with this recoil than the Devotion. The fire rate is nice. The hip fire is really good. It's good for all ranges. It's good for every situation. The turbocharger, you have to get used to pre-firing it without it. But like I said, everyone's trying to use it with a turbo, which automatically makes it S tier. But even without it, it's still very powerful. And it's a weapon that I find myself using pretty often. And so we'll put that in A tier. The Hemlock is going to be S tier. We'll move forward. We'll try to be quick with this. I tried doing the video. I don't think I mentioned this yet. I tried making a video and trying to get footage of every single gun. I had probably half of them done. And then I blue screen. And I got into another game and it was gun run. I didn't mean to hit gun run. And so then I backed out and now I was banned for 2 minutes. So I decided to do this to save time. Hemlock is an S tier weapon. It was a lot stronger last season and it's still very strong this season despite the nerfs that it received. This is a very strong weapon to use and I believe a very versatile weapon. Although there are other ARs that are more versatile than the Hemlock. I think the fact that it has so many bullets, the damage is insane, the recoil is insanely easy. Hipfire close range isn't really the worst. The only thing bad about it, close range, is the fact that it's a burst weapon. So, you know, that takes some adjusting. Other than that, that's a gun I'm using literally all the time. It's a great weapon to keep enemies at a distance. And then once you crack them or do damage, get a knock or whatever, then you push forward with your SMG. Beautiful weapon. S tier right there. It's also a weapon that I've never really used until last season as well. That's because everybody started using it. And when you're sitting on a head glitch, which is why you could rate this gun so high. When you're sitting on a head glitch, this is your best weapon. When somebody else is sitting on a head glitch, this is your best weapon. When somebody else is sitting on a head glitch and they're using a Hemlock and you're trying to use a flatline or another AR, good luck. They're beaming you. That's such a small target to hit with other assault rifles that have a lot of recoil. Regardless, I'm yapping. S tier weapon. Let's get into the L-Star really quick. The L-Star is not my favorite weapon at all. It's really not. I think that a lot of people like this because they don't have to worry about reloading. And if you have max attachments on this, I can see why it's pretty strong. Personally, for me, I don't like the recoil of this weapon at all. I don't like the overheating system. I'm just genuinely, I guess you could say, not that comfortable with this weapon. But that's not going to really inform my decision at all. I think if I'm being unbiased, I'll have to put this in the B tier. I don't think it's better than the Havoc at all, even without the turbocharger. But I also don't think it's worse than the Devo. And so I think this is a perfect place to put it, right in between these two. At least I'm being consistent with that. And yeah, sometimes I'll find myself using the L-Star as an SMG if I can't find a Volt. This is kind of like the placement holder, my attachment holder for the Volt. So I use it, you know, pretty consistently, but never as my main weapon, always as my backup SMG. I don't like using this far range at all. Another sniper, we have the longbow. In my opinion, this is probably the strongest sniper rifle there is. Maybe you guys might disagree with me. The fact that it's semi-automatic and not bolt action, or not whatever the hell the charge rifle is, means that you can get a lot more bullets into the enemy, and therefore a lot more damage. It's easier to hit your shots with this gun, in my opinion. But as a sniper rifle, at the end of the day, it's only good for one thing: long distance. If we're talking about versatility and we're talking about every situation, these sniper rifles are naturally going to be weaker. And so for these reasons, I'll have to put this. I'll put this in D tier. There's really no need for an E tier at all, really. Massive. I hate this fucking gun. I'm not a shotgun fan. I find them to be too inconsistent, although I know a lot of people like using them, so I might get some flack for this. You know, you decide whatever you decide. Your opinions are yours. All I'm saying is, y'all be using shotguns all the time and have no 20 bombs, no 4K, and you're stuck in gold. Is there a correlation? Maybe. The Massive, I believe, is very bad. Although it's good if you're barrel stuffing. I'm not the biggest fan of this gun, although I believe it did receive some buffs this season. Never been a fan of the Massive, especially without a bolt. But if we're looking at it with full attachments on, I'd much prefer other shotguns as opposed to this shotgun right here. This shotgun, I'll probably have to put... in D tier. There's really no reason for you to use a Massive. There are better shotguns, and at this point with this SMG meta, you might be getting gunned down pretty consistently using that, hitting all those damn 11s that you're hitting. Mozambique, F tier. P20, F tier. We're not talking about hop-ups, we're talking about the gun itself. These guns are terrible. I hate how common it is for us to run into these weapons when we're landing and looting. I hate them. The iron sights are weird. It shoots slow. The P20 does pretty, does a lot of damage. I think it does like 20 a bullet, but it's just so slow. So damn slow. You're going to get magged every time using these weapons, especially if you're not using the hop-ups that are associated with them. We're going to put those both in F tier. I don't need to discuss that much further. The Nemesis. The Nemesis is something... The Nemesis used to be one of my favorite guns when it first came out, and then it received a lot of nerfs. The Nemesis, my opinions on the Nemesis are a bit controversial. A lot of people rate the Nemesis very high because it doesn't really have all that much recoil. And, when it's charged up fully, it shoots really fast. The reason why I'm going to rate this lower than you would expect is because that first magazine, that entry mag, when you're opening up a fight, when you have the jump on somebody, when they're not looking at you, and, you're ready to fire at them, that first magazine shoots so damn slow. A lot of the times, in that moment, you could use a Nemesis without the charge or another AR and put them in the same exact situation. The other ARs, you're going to get much more consistent damage out of them all the time. Using the Nemesis on that first mag, because it shoots so slow, by the time you pull the trigger twice, the enemy's probably reacting already. You probably don't have the ability to kill them in that moment because it's so slow. But when you use different ARs that are consistent with their fire rates and do much more damage in that moment, that's what I'm talking about when I say that opening mag is... It's such a bad thing about the Nemesis that makes me not use it at all. But when you do fully charge it up, yeah, it's going to be much stronger. The recoil is a lot less, the fire rate's a lot more, therefore the DPS is a lot higher. But that first mag really screws me over. Also, on top of that, this is probably the worst hipfire out of every AR in the game. This is not one of my favorite weapons at all, but it's not the worst. And so I will use this much more than any of these weapons I use down here, but not more than any of the weapons up here. And I like to think that the guns that I use are strong, hence why I use them all the time. And the ones that I don't use are weak, or maybe I'm not good with them, so I'll put them lower in this tier list. And so the Nemesis, I believe, is C tier. Although, again, if it's fully charged up, you'll probably put it A tier. So for all you Nemesis crutches out there, you might have it right here, and I'm okay with that. But that first mag, everything else considered, we'll put it in C tier. PK is my favorite shotgun by far. I think it's the best shotgun. Again, a gun like this is only good for one thing, and that's close range. But with the PK and the precision choke that comes with it, it's not a hop-up, but it comes with the weapon, so I can talk about it. It actually allows you to do a lot more damage at further distances as well. You know, it's not going to be as good as AR's longer distance, but it's a lot better than other shotguns at longer distances, and is very good close range as well. Although the fire rate is slow because you have to chamber in another shell every single time. The damage potential is I got hit in the head the other day for 124 with the PK. There's no other shotgun that can do that, not even close. I'll probably put the PK in B tier. Again, I can't put it too high because it's not the most versatile and it's not good for every situation, but it's good for a lot of situations. And I find myself using it here and there until I hit a bunch of 9s, and then I'll never pick it up. The Prowler got nerfed heavily this season. Prowler was one of the strongest weapons last season because it was in the care package, and then this season when they put it back to the floor loot, they nerfed the fire rate very heavily. So it's not nearly as good as it used to be, but it's still pretty solid. This is a gun that I use all the time. The Prowler is good at every range, something like the Car isn't. I'll talk about other SMGs as I get to them. This is good for all ranges, long, medium, and close. The damage potential out of this with the 5 burst capacity of every trigger pull, you know, means that you're doing a lot of damage consistently. The fire rate is something to adjust to, though, if you don't use this gun, but in my opinion, I think this is A tier. And it's something that, again, you should be using every game, as much as you can at least. R301, we're also going to put that in A tier. It's seen better days. It used to be S tier, but it's received nerfs, many nerfs over the seasons. Recently, they kind of buffed this R3. I think they buffed the hipfire, so the hipfire is not as sporadic anymore. The damage is still dookie, but it's a solid weapon. It's versatile. Honestly, I probably have to put this in B tier. I use it all the time, but that's because I'm a lazy looter. It is extremely versatile, and there's strength that resides in that versatility. But if we're talking about the damage in and of itself, it shoots for peas and pebbles. It almost does no damage. You got to shoot like 20 bullets just to one-clip somebody. And that's a significant portion of your magazine that you have to hit successfully in order for you to one-clip them. I still like it a lot. I'll probably put it in A. Yeah, put it in B tier. It's seen better days. The R9 we'll put it in E tier. It's not the worst gun ever. It's not as bad as any of these weapons are, but it is dog meat now. They nerfed that gun into the ground. Maybe rightfully so. I don't know. That increase in recoil is crazy. It's got more recoil than the flatline. The damage, I think it does like 9 or 10 per bullet now. No barrel stabilizer, so you only have a laser sight, which really doesn't compensate for the recoil at all. You really need to have this fully kitted just so it can feel somewhat like it used to last season. Last season was more or less probably S tier. But they really nerfed this into the ground. I use this never. In fact, I will never pick up the R9, even if it's a gun on the ground and it's the only gun there. I literally walk past it just like I do with the Mozambique P20. I don't use this gun at all. It's not as bad as these F tier weapons. Still it's still a fully automatic weapon at the end of the day, but it is dog meat now. It is the worst SMG, and I never use this gun. Stop using it. I promise there are better SMGs, and I'll get to that later. The Rampage. The Rampage is a weird one. The Rampage I find myself using often, not because I like it, but I feel like I run into them so frequently. But also, on top of that, it does a lot of damage. You don't need a lot of attachments for it to be good. The iron sights are great. We won't talk about the thermite when I'm discussing its ranking, but, you know, thermite included, it's a crazy, crazy weapon. Shoots through doors. The fire rate is crazy. Damage is insane. It's an LMG, though, so the strafe, your strafe is very slow. It's pretty good at all ranges, but again, that fire rate, it really does hurt this gun. I don't hate this weapon, but I don't think it's the greatest. I'll only really use this gun off rip. I think it's a great weapon to get off rip. Like I said, you don't need a lot of attachments for it to be good. You don't need a lot of ammo for you to get, you know, a lot of kills as well, or to at least do a lot of damage on the team. But again, it is hindered because it is an LMG, and the fire rate is so poor. We're not including the thermite into my ranking for this gun, so I'll keep it in C tier. Excuse me. The RE45. The RE45 Gold is great. It's one of the. It is the only SMG you can put a, or it's not. It's a machine pistol. But regardless, you can put a digi on that. So I will find myself using it all the time, only if it's gold, which comes with hammer points as well. Other than that, I think the RE45 is a pretty mediocre weapon. If you're using the RE45, I prefer you to use the alternator, and you'll do a lot better. I promise. It's a pretty bad weapon without all the attachments. So we're gonna put it in D tier. Lastly, For the last of the snipers, we have the Sentinel. The Sentinel, I don't like this weapon. Yeah, it could do a lot of damage. You charge it up with your cells, and it could do like 160 in the head. It shoots too slow. I suck with it. We're gonna put it in E tier. I think it's better than a charge rifle. But again, snipers naturally are going to be lower in my list because they're not versatile and they're not really good for all situations. And personally, for me, if you're going to be using a weapon that you need to have good damage output at longer distances, get better with marksman weapons like the G7 or 3030, and get better with ARs. Much better for you, even if you think that it's not. The playstyle that you play when you're using a sniper is much slower. A lot of the times you'll end up getting killed or your teammates killed because you're back there pretending, you know, you're Chris Kyle, American Sniper, RIP. Spitfire. Spitfire is a weird one. I never use this weapon. Actually, I kind of use this weapon a little bit as a placement holder, just like the L-Star for the Volt, but the Spitfire for the R3. Not the biggest fan of this weapon. I'm not the biggest fan of LMGs in general, but this is probably my favorite LMG. So we'll probably put this in, honestly, B tier, and we'll probably put the R3 back in A tier. The Spitfire is not that bad of a weapon at all. It's got, what, 50 bullets in it. The damage potential is insane, but it shoots pretty slow. It slows you down in terms of your strafing, like I mentioned. It's not really the greatest for like super long distances, like the R3 or maybe a Hemlock, because the recoil kind of kicks a lot at that distance. It's pretty good close range though. Again, it's got so many bullets. If somebody's not one clipping you with the SMG, you probably are able to kill them because you have so many bullets in that damn gun. I didn't think I'd rate it that high, but honestly, it's not that bad of a weapon. B tier. Triple take. I never use this weapon. This gun is horrible. It's much better as a shotgun off rip. I love this gun off rip. Close range as a shotty, even though it doesn't function as that. I enjoy it. Versatility speaking, this is the most versatile marksman, because like I said, it does kind of act like a shotgun close range, and you could turn the choke on and do more damage at longer ranges. But it just feels very inconsistent, and the fire rate is very slow for this weapon. Although it is the most versatile, I think its negatives far outweigh the positives, so I'll have to put this in C tier. Maybe even D tier. I wouldn't be mad about putting it in D tier. And lastly, we have the Volt. That's going to be S tier. The Volt, Hemlock, that's my bread and butter this season. Those are the two weapons that I'm using the most. The Volt is the best SMG by far, and realistically, it always has been. Don't tell any of the pros that. The pros never liked the Volt until now because the R9 got nerfed. But previously, the R9 was loved by all the pro players because the one clip potential was insane. And of course, if you're competing at that level, the one clip is the difference maker in that fight. And with the fire rate of the R9, all the pros and a lot of other people enjoyed the R9 the best. And it kind of has a trickle down effect. Whatever the pros use, you know, everybody else tends to use. But now that it's nerfed, the Volt's kind of replaced that, and now people are seeing how damn good the Volt is. It's been my personal favorite SMG since Season 6 when it came out. It's great. It's the best SMG at very long distances, very medium distances, and even in close range, because the hip fire is so good. The fire rate is not that fast, so you can, you know, redirect your aim a little bit if you're off and still have a significant portion of your magazine left in the gun. The damage is pretty good. Recoil is almost none of it. All the, you know, the iron sights are great. I'm kind of glazing the Volt at this point. It's by far, in my opinion, the best gun in this season. And if you're not using the Volt and you find yourself using a car, where is it at? Or the R9, you're tweaking. Go hop up on this Volt right now, and I guarantee you, you'll hit pred. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with this tier list. Again, I had to rush this pretty quick because the other way I wanted to go about this wasn't working. Took too long, so I hope you guys enjoy this. Thank you guys for your patience, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bam 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 bam. Bam 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 bam. Bam 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 bam.